Good morning everyone and welcome to First Chapter Fun. This is episode 5. How are you all doing? It's the weekend. We made it. Once again I am on Facebook Live here and on Instagram Live here. So it's very strange. I've changed the setup a little bit. So I was told if I look around here it looks like I'm looking at both of you. So we'll give that a whirl. So how's everyone doing? Crazy times still, that's for sure. I have to thank all of you though, because today was actually the first morning that I woke up and didn't think about the pandemic. I woke up thinking about First Chapter Fun, the book that I was reading, and all of the books that we have lined up. So thank you to all of you for joining in and watching this, which is just amazing. So First Chapter Fun, episode 5. Who do we have for you today? Now, I tried this yesterday and it didn't work out so well. Here we go. There we are. We have, drum roll, listening for the drum roll, we have, I'm going to have to get this in the light properly. There we go. The Lady Upstairs. I know it's back to front on Instagram Live down here, but apparently I can't change that. So trust me, it says The Lady Upstairs, and this is by Halley Sutton, who has joined us. She's here today. Don't forget, you can leave questions and comments for her that she will answer. Ask her anything about the book, the writing process, how she came up with the idea, whatever you like. She's out in LA. It's 8:30 there, I believe, so thank you for joining us. Halley, lovely that you're watching. That's so cool. So there we go. That's what I'll be reading from today. I was hoping actually to go out for a walk later on. It was, let me get this right now, in Celsius it was about 16 degrees yesterday. With the wind chill today now it's about -9, which in Fahrenheit, and I had to look this up, it was 60 yesterday and it's about 16 now. So I'm still going to go out for a walk. Social distancing measures in place, of course. So, this novel is Halley's debut. It's her first novel. Let me get the screen up again, the nice purple one, for those who have just joined. Hold on a second here. Here we go. There we are. This is there. Isn't that lovely? What a lovely cover. So it's her debut novel, and goodness knows that when you have a first novel coming out, it is absolutely nerve-wracking. And I can't imagine doing this during a pandemic, because you're already worried about how it's going to be received and sales and all. You just don't know what to expect. So please, if you like what you hear, go check this book out, have a look, spread this video far and wide so other people can get engaged, and hopefully we can drum up some readers for Halley. Wouldn't that be great? You know, social media is a wonderful thing when you can say that. So without further ado, shall we get reading? Shall we get stuck in? I haven't read this book in its entirety yet, but let me tell you, after the first chapter, I've just got to know what happens. So let's get started. The Lady Upstairs by Halley Sutton. Chapter 1. I'd picked the hotel for the Sting because the bar had one hell of a happy hour. If you liked your drinks cheap and strong, the glasses washed maybe once in the last week. It was down the street from the studios, the right type of place to entice a movie man to meet an obliging blonde for a quick afternoon pick-me-up. And not the least of my calculations, the St. Leo let me have my choice of adjoining rooms whenever I checked in, and didn't mind early arrangements or a quick redecoration for the right price. By my second drink, the apricot-tinted windows were purpling with twilight, happening so early these days, turning the light in the bar a good soft colour for sloppy, bad decisions. I was waiting on my third when I saw Ellen escorting the Mark through the lobby to the elevator. She stayed cool, didn't toss me so much as a backward glance. It was harder to do than it looked. But Ellen kept her eyes firmly on the Mark's face, fingers curled around the patched elbow of his tweed blazer. A gift from one of his grandkids, no doubt, or one of the grown children benefiting from his production company's rampant nepotism. When I'd researched him for Lou and our shadowy employer, the lady upstairs, it had been one of those things that sold me. He kept his grabby sons on set, even after numerous complaints had been filed. I'd read that and thought, this one's perfect. He looked at me, a swoop of terror in my stomach, but it was no more than a passing glance of a man surveying the room. I met his eyes and looked away without smiling, letting my gaze go through him. Once they got upstairs, showtime. Even on a Saturday afternoon, prime drinking hours, the bar was nearly empty. It was big business when a young couple sat down by the windows, and I watched them as I waited for the mark to reappear, distracting myself. Her long, honey-brown hair was ironed straight and scissored over her face, while his fingers plucked at the neck of his sweat-splotched shirt. They ignored each other and the fact that neither of them was having any fun. She ordered something clear, vodka soda, I bet, unfussy and low-calorie. See how low maintenance I am? And watched it melt all over her napkin. They hadn't slept together yet, I was positive. Perhaps tonight was the night. Another bet. Between the heat and the poor hotel accommodations, and the fact that they were working hard to ignore each other, it wouldn't be a night to remember. Making up stories about strangers is not usually in my nature. "Relax, Joe, would you?" Robert Jackal had said that morning, buttoning his shirt collar and studying himself in my bathroom mirror. Eyelashes longer than any woman's, but that was the only thing womanly at all about that carved, handsome face. Eyes pure, no hazel green, dark hair in disarray like a sleepy boy's, crunchy between my fingers. It's not like you to be nervous. Even before the sun was up, my walls sweated little beads of condensation. I was enjoying the coolness of the pillow against my cheek, starfishing my limbs and trying to find some chill in the spot he'd left. I didn't answer him. "By the time I'm done, we'll have so much footage we won't know what to do with it all," he said, then bent down to kiss me on the forehead, reaching down to tap his fingers against the bracelet he'd given me as a birthday present a few years back, a mistake he hadn't repeated since. I'd slapped his face away. As I waited, I piled my fleshless lime rinds into dimpled green pyramids, keeping the trash to mark time, how many drinks I'd had, keeping my fingers busy so I wouldn't start doing algebra about Klein's net worth on the bar top. 326 million meant he'd pay how much for a photograph of his nasty predilections? What about a video? 6 blockbusters scheduled to come out in the next year meant a reputation was worth how much exactly? 50 grand? More? My 20% of 50 grand would just about do it. Calm down, I told myself. In less than an hour, you'll have the prints, and this time tomorrow, or the day after, say, you'll have what you owe to the lady upstairs. Every 3 minutes, I allowed myself one long swallow of gin. I let the couple distract me as I waited out Ellen's seduction. The girl's purse had crept from the floor to her lap, and now she clutched it tight between her knees like a chastity belt. There are women who can spend time with men and manage to keep smiles on their faces no matter what. She wasn't one of them, and I liked her for it. The man said something too low for me to catch, leaning in close and intimate. I leaned forward too. The girl tilted her head. He placed both hands flat on the table and repeated it again, louder, slower, as though the problem was with her hearing. The girl rocketed backward, a blush throttling her neck, and then, slowly, deliberately, she tipped the 3/4 full beer he'd been nursing into his lap. He jumped up and flapped his hands at his crotch, squawking. I laughed out loud. And then there was the flare of the elevator as it opened on a familiar face, the mark, the object of every stakeout I'd sat through for the last 3 months, first me alone, and then later when I'd recruited her with Ellen. He looked flustered, pissed. I snuck a quick peek around the lobby. Luckily, most patrons were still tracking the beer foam bath, and no one seemed to notice one of the wealthiest men in the city barrelling for the door. My pulse jumping, I reached for my purse steadily, measuring my movements in slow seconds, thankful for the commotion. I signalled to the bartender, slipping out a credit card and the room key in one motion, the number 345 scribbled in thick black strokes on an attached post-it, being very careful not to turn and look at Hiram Klein. Behind me, I heard someone from the bar call out, "Hey, aren't you that movie guy?" And I turned my head, but the mark, Hiram Klein, billionaire movie producer and launcher of 1,000 careers, was hustling out of the lobby. The bar patron sat back down, not enticed enough to chase after that movie guy. The bartender handed me my check and I smiled, cozying up to him across the bar top, skin buzzing, trying to imagine what celluloid gold Jackal must have gotten if Klein was that fired up. "Was that a celebrity?" I asked him, testing the waters. I have a reckless streak sometimes. "Not much of one," he said, and passed me my receipt. The door to 345 opened with a smooth click. The bathroom was barely bigger than a closet, and I could hear the erratic drip of a leaky faucet. The room was 90% bed. No use wasting space. The only art on the walls was something Lou had picked out, a shamelessly tacky Thomas Kincaid wannabes whale scene Jackal had mounted before Ellen and Klein arrived. The eye of the whale could take up to 60 minutes of video, but the Moby Dick we were chasing hadn't needed it. He'd finished within 35 flat. The bedside alarm clock housed a speaker that Jackal monitored from the next room, magnifying everything said or whispered or moaned in that bed to a mountaintop yodel when you played it back. In the centre of the bed in question, legs butterflied, sheet dripping down her chest, was my girl Ellen. Her fluffy blonde hair was a nimbus around her head, and a few strands of it had been tugged out and dangled across the greyish-white pillowcases. A black and orange duvet was crumpled on the floor, like it had been yanked off. Ellen's big black eyes were glassy, a little bit thrilled, a little bit tearful, and one bright red mark clawed across her face. I could see the outline of 2 fingers forming on her cheek. So he'd used an open hand this time. "How did it go?" Ellen shrugged. "Same as before," she said. "A few slaps during, a bit harder today for the video. I told him to prove he was a real man." Ellen rubbed her jaw, and a little squeak came out of her. I hissed in sympathy. It was easy to be kind with the chorus of "Money, money, money" galloping through my veins. I tapped on the adjoining door, eager for Jackal's playback. No answer. I had a bad feeling. I tried to ignore it. Maybe he was in the bathroom. I looked over my shoulder at Ellen, who was slowly combing her fingers through her pillow-fluffed hair. "Was the room already set up when you got here?" She nodded. I tested the door for myself and it opened. I pushed at its mirror twin to reveal a bed and a bathroom. No light on. No sign of anyone. Not Robert Jackal, not the recording equipment he should have set up to catch Mr. Casting Couch in flagrante delicto, not even a note. I didn't bother to close the door before I climbed up on the dresser, grappling the Kincaid down from the wall. I threw it on the bed, narrowly missing Ellen, who shrieked. The whale's eye was empty. Just an eye. I let fly a string of expletives that came out of me, twisted and nonsensical. Fuck that asshole! A perfect goddamn opportunity, and Jackal had wasted it. "What's wrong?" Ellen asked. "He didn't get it?" Her voice took on a slightly hysterical edge. "That was all for nothing?" I ignored her and looked more closely around the room. Klein hadn't left anything behind, not a watch or a button, nothing to prove he'd even been there. God damn it, Jackal. $11,000. That was all I needed, 11 grand, and he'd fucked me out of it. There were 2 options I could think of as to why. Another woman, a poker table, and neither was a good excuse for fucking me out of the last bit of the money I needed to pay off my debts to our boss. I pressed my knuckles into my eyes until little comets pinged around my lids. Think, Joe. It was a setback, sure, but as long as Ellen hadn't blown it with Klein, We still had him on the hook. What was another week when I'd been waiting nearly 3 years to be clear of the lady? It was nothing. Absolutely nothing. As long as I still had Ellen on my side. I pasted a sympathetic smile on my face and turned toward Ellen on the bed. "You okay?" I asked, my voice sweet enough to maraschino an onion. "Yeah," she said, still working her jaw. "Sometimes I almost like it." She smiled for me, maybe putting on a brave face, maybe not. She'd been a good pick for this particular job. "That's good, Ellen. I'm really happy to hear that, because I'm going to need you to tough it out for a little longer." Ellen's face froze and she tugged the sheet up to her chin. "I thought you said this was the last week." "Plans change. It's the nature of the job." Ellen's face reddened and she sat all the way up, the sheet falling to her waist. If she thought I'd be impressed with the view, she was mistaken. "I can't do this another week." On the best of days, patience was not my strong suit, and this was no longer the best of days. "You have a better acting gig on the books?" I snapped. "You have any other producers breaking down your door?" Ellen glared at me from behind her puffy thatch of blonde hair. "It's not exactly empowering to be acting like his mistress all the time." I bit my tongue. Loose tempers weren't what I needed. What I needed was a compliant Ellen still on my side. I sat down on the bed. I didn't touch her, but I let my hand get close so she knew I was making the effort to respect her space. The mark on her cheek would fade soon, I thought, but those slaps would have cracked like gunshots in the bedside mic. God damn. "Ellen," I said. A person's name is usually their most comforting sound, which is also true for dogs. "Ellen, I'm really sorry. An emergency must have kept Jackal today, but I promise you, we won't miss it again. I need you to do this one little favour for me, and then it'll all be over. You'll have your money, and you'll never have to see him again. And guess what? I bet he'll never smack another girl again in his life. He'll be too scared of what you could do to him." I wasn't sure that was true, but I was certain he wouldn't guide another extra to the casting couch without thinking twice. That was for damn sure. And Ellen would know that she'd done that. She'd been the one to change him. I could see her turn it over. She furrowed her brow and stared into her lap hard. Not a yes, not a no. A week earlier, that little speech would have been enough, but now she hesitated, which meant she doubted me, which meant she was more dangerous than she'd been 30 minutes ago. Jackal, you have fucked me now. "Please, Ellen." I hated myself. I hated her for making me beg. "One more time? For me?" "That's all? You promise?" Ellen sniffed and wiped her nose. I hid my smile. "That's it." Ellen nodded, but she didn't look happy. "Why did he storm out of here?" I asked to change the subject, reaching for her shirt on the floor. I tossed it behind me and let her have a few moments of privacy. I poked my head into the bathroom. The trash can was empty. Klein was so paranoid that if he'd used a condom, he'd flushed it, or taken it with him. "Oh," Ellen said, her tone light, too light. Without looking at her, I knew she was about to lie to me. I hoped Klein didn't find her so easy to read. "I asked what his wife would think if she knew he was here with me." "That was enough to send him running?" I turned to stare at her. There was a faint pink glow to Ellen's face now, and she was chewing on her thumbnail. "He's touchy about his wife," she said, trying for worldly, an ingénue on the make. Hi. My final bet of the afternoon, she'd wanted something from Klein, maybe a comparison between her and his wife that found the missus wanting. Is she this sweet and juicy? Or a token, maybe, of his esteem. Oh, Ellen. I tried not to let my disgust show on my face. Whatever crumb of affection Klein could offer her was nothing compared to the cash, 50% of whatever the mark paid, that waited for her on the other side of the sting. If I was right, if she cared so much about his approval that she was willing to pick a fight, then I wouldn't be able to manage her much longer. Better not mention wives at all. You promise it's only one more time? Ellen asked, her her dark eyes suspicious and lovely. I promise, just one more. I kept my voice soft, clipping any trace of threat from it. I didn't want her scared of me, yet. I could save my threats for Robert Jackal for now, the lying fuck. Come see me tomorrow at the office, I told her as I headed for the door. We'll figure out a new plan, together. The last I could see of Ellen was her head nodding jerkily up and down as the door crashed closed behind me. I was out of the elevator, heading for the parking lot, ready to call Lou, wanting to hear her voice, ready to not think about the near miss of the blackmail photos and the money I still owed our boss, when the beer spiller caught my eye. She'd taken my seat at the bar and ordered a bottle of wine, which she was making quick work of. Her soaked friend was nowhere to be found. Reaching into my bag, I flipped a card between my fingers, my name and my number, nothing else, and scribbled on it. Men are arseholes, but I like your style. Call me if you want a free drink. Then, for good measure, I wrote not a date at the bottom, underlining it twice. I dropped it in front of her without looking. Hey, she called after me, but I didn't stop. If she was the kind of girl I had any use for, she would be chasing me. That was chapter 1 of The Lady Upstairs. I'm going to hold up that screen again. Sorry, I keep having to unlock this screen. There we go. The Lady Upstairs by Halley Sutton. I want to know all about this lady upstairs. I want to know what Jo is up to. I want to know why she owes her money, and I want to know what's going to happen. So, we're all going to have to wait a little bit because this book publishes on July 14th, but it's ready for pre-order now, and I will put the links on the recording and all the rest of it. So don't forget to go and check this one out, because I already know from other people who've read it that it's incredible. So do please check it out. So for tomorrow's first chapter fun, we have Follow Me by Kathleen Barber. That will be tomorrow's read, and I will tell you all about that tomorrow. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope that if you can, social distancing measures being respected, of course, you can get outside and get some fresh air. I know I certainly need some. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay kind, and I'll see you tomorrow.